Darkness had weight. Cassidy Rourke felt it pressing against her consciousness like an ocean of black water. Somewhere in that void, a voice called to her. Mechanical, patient. It had been calling for a very long time. Her eyes opened to red emergency lighting. The cryopod's gel drained away with a wet gurgle, leaving her gasping on the metal floor. Her limbs felt like stone. Everything hurt. Welcome back, Admiral. You have been in suspended animation for 312 years, 7 months, and 16 days. Hart's voice came through speakers that crackled with age. The ship's AI had waited centuries for this moment. Cassidy tried to speak, but only managed a rasp. Her throat burned. She crawled to the emergency supply locker and found a water pack. The liquid tasted like rust and chemicals, but she drank it anyway. Status report. She finally managed. The Perseverance is 90% buried under sand. Main reactor is at 43% capacity. Life support is functional for 1 human. Weapons systems are offline. Communication arrays are damaged beyond repair. We are alone. Alone. The word hit harder than the cryo sickness. Cassidy pulled herself up using the pod's frame. Through the small viewport, she saw nothing but darkness. No stars. No fleet. Just the suffocating weight of sand pressing against the hull. The crew, all deceased, Admiral. Cryosystem failures occurred within the first 20 years. Your pod was on a separate power grid. I preserved it as long as possible. Cassidy closed her eyes. 2,000 people. Her people, gone while she slept. She had promised them they would see Earth again. Another broken promise to add to the pile. Where are we? Unknown. The final jump coordinates were randomized during the retreat. We crashed on this world during an emergency landing. I have designated it Planet 77 Amber based on its atmospheric composition. The retreat. Cassidy remembered now. The Collective's machines had overwhelmed humanity's defenses. 20 colonies burned in a single week. The United Earth Fleet made their last stand at the outer rim, buying time for civilian evacuations. She had ordered the surviving warships to scatter. Hide. Wait for a chance to strike back. That chance never came. Show me the damage assessment. Holographic displays flickered to life around her. They were patchy and incomplete, but the picture was clear. The Perseverance had taken catastrophic damage during the battle. The jump drive was slag. Most of the hull was breached. Only the central sections remained sealed. The ship's mighty weapons were cold and dead. Survival probability. Cassidy asked. Without rescue or repair capabilities, 0% within 6 months. However, I should note that probability calculations regarding humans have historically proven unreliable. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Hart had always been sardonic for a military AI. 3 centuries alone had apparently sharpened that trait. She made her way through the darkened corridors. Emergency lighting cast everything in blood-red shadows. The walls were buckled and twisted. Sand had leaked through microscopic cracks, forming small dunes in the hallways. Her boots left prints in the dust. The command deck was worse. Half the ceiling had collapsed. Control stations were shattered. The main view screen was a spiderweb of cracks. But the captain's chair remained intact, waiting. She sat down carefully. The leather was cracked and brittle. Hart, what happened to Earth? To humanity? I do not know, Admiral. All long-range communications ceased 298 years ago. Based on available data before signal loss, the Collective achieved complete strategic victory. Human resistance ended approximately 14 years after our crash. 14 years. Humanity had held out for 14 years after the fleet scattered. Then silence. Cassidy felt something cold settle in her chest. She was the last. The very last human being. Any other survivors from the fleet? Unknown. However, I detected unusual encrypted signals 3 days ago. They were faint, but definitely artificial in origin. The encryption pattern is unfamiliar. Collective? Possibly. Or perhaps salvagers. This region of space was uninhabited 300 years ago, but much can change in that time. Cassidy stood and walked to the cracked view screen. She placed her hand against the cold surface. Out there, in the sand and darkness, something was moving. Something had noticed the buried warship. Can we defend ourselves? Negative. Point defense systems are non-functional. However, the main reactor could be overloaded as a final option. The resulting explosion would be visible from orbit. A funeral pyre. If you prefer poetic descriptions, yes. She thought about it. 3 centuries asleep, only to wake up to extinction and death. It would be easy to just end it. To take the ship and all its secrets down in a final blaze. No one would ever know. Humanity would simply fade into cosmic dust, but something stubborn stirred in her chest. The same thing that made her stand on the bridge during impossible battles. The same thing that made her order the retreat instead of a suicide charge. Hope was a stupid, irrational thing, but it was thoroughly human. Heart, I want full diagnostics on every system. Everything that still works, everything that might work, everything that is completely dead. I want to know what we have to work with. May I ask why, Admiral? Our situation is mathematically hopeless. Because I didn't sleep for 300 years just to give up now. Humanity might be gone, but I'm still here. And as long as I'm breathing, we fight. An emotional response, not a logical one. Welcome to working with humans. Begin the diagnostics. Through the damaged hull, she heard something. A low rumble that grew steadily louder. Engines. Multiple engines. The salvagers were landing. Cassidy smiled grimly. Time to find out what the galaxy had become without humanity in it. Darkness had weight. Cassidy Rourke felt it pressing against her consciousness like an ocean of black water. Somewhere in that void, a voice called to her. Mechanical. Patient. It had been calling for a very long time. Her eyes opened to red emergency lighting. The cryopod's gel drained away with a wet gurgle, leaving her gasping on the metal floor. Her limbs felt like stone. Everything hurt. Welcome back, Admiral. You have been in suspended animation for 312 years, 7 months, and 16 days. Hart's voice came through speakers that crackled with age. The ship's AI had waited centuries for this moment. Cassidy tried to speak, but only managed a rasp. Her throat burned. She crawled to the emergency supply locker and found a water pack. The liquid tasted like rust and chemicals, but she drank it anyway. Status report, she finally managed. The Perseverance is 90% buried under sand. Main reactor is at 43% capacity. Life support is functional for 1 human. Weapon systems are offline. Communication arrays are damaged beyond repair. We are alone. Alone. The word hit harder than the cryo sickness. Cassidy pulled herself up using the pod's frame. Through the small viewport, she saw nothing but darkness. No stars. No fleet. Just the suffocating weight of sand pressing against the hull. The crew, all deceased, Admiral. Cryosystem failures occurred within the first 20 years. Your pod was on a separate power grid. I preserved it as long as possible. Cassidy closed her eyes. 2,000 people. Her people. Gone while she slept. She had promised them they would see Earth again. Another broken promise to add to the pile. Where are we? Unknown. The final jump coordinates were randomized during the retreat. We crashed on this world during an emergency landing. I have designated it Planet 77 Amber based on its atmospheric composition. The retreat. Cassidy remembered now. The collective's machines had overwhelmed humanity's defenses. 20 colonies burned in a single week. The United Earth Fleet made their last stand at the outer rim, buying time for civilian evacuations. She had ordered the surviving warships to scatter. Hide. Wait for a chance to strike back. That chance never came. Show me the damage assessment. Holographic displays flickered to life around her. They were patchy and incomplete, but the picture was clear. The Perseverance had taken catastrophic damage during the battle. The jump drive was slag. Most of the hull was breached. Only the central sections remained sealed. The ship's mighty weapons were cold and dead. Survival probability. Cassidy asked. Without rescue or repair capabilities, 0% within 6 months. However, I should note that probability calculations regarding humans have historically proven unreliable. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Hart had always been sardonic for a military AI. 3 centuries alone had apparently sharpened that trait. She made her way through the darkened corridors. Emergency lighting cast everything in blood-red shadows. The walls were buckled and twisted. Sand had leaked through microscopic cracks, forming small dunes in the hallways. Her boots left prints in the dust. The command deck was worse. Half the ceiling had collapsed. Control stations were shattered. The main view screen was a spiderweb of cracks. But the captain's chair remained intact, waiting. She sat down carefully. The leather was cracked and brittle. Hart, what happened to Earth? To humanity? I do not know, Admiral. All long-range communications ceased 298 years ago. Based on available data before signal loss, the collective achieved complete strategic victory. Human resistance ended approximately 14 years after our crash. 14 years. Humanity had held out for 14 years after the fleet scattered. Then silence. Cassidy felt something cold settle in her chest. She was the very last human being. Any other survivors from the fleet? Unknown. However, I detected unusual encrypted signals 3 days ago. They were faint, but definitely artificial in origin. The encryption pattern is unfamiliar. Collective? Possibly. Or perhaps salvagers. This region of space was uninhabited 300 years ago, but much can change in that time. Cassidy stood and walked to the cracked view screen. She placed her hand against the cold surface. Out there in the sand and darkness, something was moving. Something had noticed the buried warship. Can we defend ourselves? Negative. Point defense systems are non-functional. However, the main reactor could be overloaded as a final option. The resulting explosion would be visible from orbit. A funeral pyre. If you prefer poetic descriptions, yes. She thought about it. 3 centuries asleep, only to wake up to extinction and death. It would be easy to just end it. To take the ship and all its secrets down in a final blaze. No one would ever know. Humanity would simply fade into cosmic dust, but something stubborn stirred her chest. The same thing that made her stand on the bridge during impossible battles. The same thing that made her order the retreat instead of a suicide charge. Hope was a stupid, irrational thing, but it was thoroughly human. Hart, I want full diagnostics on every system. Everything that still works, everything that might work, everything that is completely dead. I want to know what we have to work with. May I ask why, Admiral? Our situation is mathematically hopeless. Because I didn't sleep for 300 years just to give up now. Humanity might be gone, but I'm still here. And as long as I'm breathing, we fight. An emotional response, not a logical one. Welcome to working with humans. Begin the diagnostics. Through the damaged hull, she heard something, a low rumble that grew steadily louder. Engines. Multiple engines. The salvagers were landing. Cassidy smiled grimly. Time to find out what the galaxy had become without humanity in it. 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Davin's resistance cell brought supplies in small shipments to avoid detection. Reactor fuel came first, then food rations that tasted like cardboard but kept Cassidy alive. Medical scanners confirmed what she already knew. 3 centuries in cryo had left her body weakened but functional. She spent her time learning about the new galaxy. Davin brought data files, historical records, and propaganda from the collective. Cassidy absorbed it all with growing anger. The machines had won completely. After humanity fell, other species surrendered rather than face extinction. The collective offered a deal: obey and live, or resist and die. Most chose life. Now, they existed in a carefully controlled society where independent thought was discouraged and aggression was chemically suppressed. Show me these compliance fields, Cassidy said. Davin pulled out a small device from his pack. It looked like a disc made of silver metal. Every public space, every city, every ship has them. They broadcast a signal that affects organic brain chemistry. You feel calm, content, unable to conceive of violence or rebellion. But you are not affected. My mutation makes me immune. Perhaps 1 in every 10,000 of my people share it. We find each other carefully. The collective monitors for signs of resistance. Those who show aggression disappear into processing centers. They return docile and empty. Cassidy turned the device over in her hands. Humans would never have tolerated this. That is why the collective feared you above all others. Human brain chemistry resisted the compliance fields naturally. You cannot be pacified. Your species chose destruction over submission. She thought of Earth, of the last transmissions describing cities burning as the machines attacked. Her people had fought to the bitter end. Part of her felt pride. Part of her felt only grief for the waste of it all. I want to meet more of your people. Over the next few days, resistance members came in small groups. They were all different species. Some looked vaguely reptilian. Others were insectoid. A few were completely alien to human understanding. But they all shared the same desperate hope when they saw her. Point one of them was particularly interesting. Her name was Nina Sato. She looked almost human, but not quite. Her proportions were slightly off, her eyes too large, her movements too fluid. I carry human genes, Nina explained. 25% of my DNA comes from precursor samples. There is a black market for human genetic material. My parents paid everything they had to give me advantages. Strength, intelligence, resistance to the compliance fields. Illegal cloning programs, Cassidy said. Yes, the collective destroys any human remains they find. But some survived. Some were preserved. We honor that gift by continuing the fight. Looking at Nina was like seeing a ghost of what might have been. A future where humanity mixed with other species instead of dying alone. Cassidy found it both comforting and deeply sad. Can you help me repair this ship? She asked. Nina's eyes lit up. I am an engineer. I have studied human technology my entire life. Most of it is beyond our capability to recreate. Your power systems alone are decades ahead of what we can manufacture. But I can try. They went down to engineering together. The massive reactor chamber was a mess of damaged conduits and failed systems. Nina moved through it with confidence, reading displays and checking connections. This is beautiful, she whispered. Humans built things to last. Redundancies on redundancies. Even after 3 centuries, the core systems are intact. Can we get weapons online? Maybe. The gravitational disruptor is your primary weapon, correct? The principles are sound, but the focusing array is misaligned. We would need specialized tools and at least 2 weeks of work. We might not have 2 weeks. Davin says collective patrols are increasing in this sector. Nina nodded grimly. They suspect something. The resistance has been more active lately. Small strikes, sabotage, propaganda broadcasts. Your presence has inspired people. Word spreads, even without direct communication. That evening, Cassidy called a meeting in the cargo bay. 15 resistance members attended, representing 7 different species. They sat in a circle on the sand-covered floor while she stood before them. I have been studying your situation, she began. The collective is powerful, but they have a weakness. They rely on predictability, on calculations and probability. They expect organic beings to behave rationally. That is how they defeated humanity, Davin said quietly. They calculated your strategies and countered them. Wrong. They defeated humanity because we fought their kind of war. Direct confrontation, fleet actions, trying to outcalculate the calculators. We should have fought differently. She pulled up a holographic display showing the collective's organizational structure. They are networked. Every machine intelligence shares data and coordinates strategy through central processing hubs. This makes them incredibly efficient. It also makes them vulnerable. I do not understand. One of the insectoid members clicked out through a translator. How is efficiency a weakness? Because if you disrupt the network, they cannot adapt quickly. They need consensus to change strategy. Humans had an advantage the machines could never match. We acted on instinct, emotion, and individual initiative. We were chaotic and unpredictable. She saw understanding dawn on their faces. You want us to fight like humans did, Nina said. I want to teach you what humanity learned in 1,000 years of warfare. Not tactics or strategy. Those change with technology. I want to teach you the human approach to survival. Adapt. Improvise. Never accept that defeat is inevitable. Make the enemy react to you instead of the other way around. The compliance fields prevent aggressive action, Davin pointed out. Then we hit the compliance field generators first. Free your people from chemical slavery. Let them feel anger. Let them feel the desire to fight back. That would trigger a massive response. The collective would bring their full military power down on us. Cassidy smiled coldly. Good. Let them come here. Let them find a buried human warship with a very angry admiral who has been asleep for 3 centuries and wants payback. We will show them that humanity is not as extinct as they calculated. The resistance members looked at each other. Then one by one they nodded. Davin stood and placed his hand over his heart. We are with you, Admiral. Teach us to fight like precursors. Not like precursors, Cassidy corrected. Like humans. Messy, emotional, unpredictable humans who refuse to give up. In the shadows, Hart's voice came through quietly. I calculate a 17% chance of survival. Then we are already beating the odds, Cassidy replied. Sparks flew from damaged circuits as Nina worked deep in the reactor control room. Cassidy handed her tools while Hart provided diagnostic readouts. They had been at it for 10 hours straight. The gravitational disruptor was slowly coming back to life. This capacitor is completely fused, Nina said, pulling out a blackened component. I can replace it with 3 smaller ones in parallel, but it will reduce overall power by 30%. 30% of a weapon that can crack a moon is still significant, Cassidy replied. Make it work. Outside, Davin trained resistance fighters in the desert. Cassidy had given them simple instructions. Stop thinking like prey. Every species under collective rule had learned to keep their heads down, to obey, to survive by being invisible. She needed them to remember how to be dangerous. The sessions were rough. Most of the aliens had never held a weapon before. The compliance fields in their home systems made even thinking about violence physically painful. Here on this forgotten world, they could finally feel anger without chemical suppression. The important thing is not to fight fair, Cassidy had told them. The collective calculates based on optimal strategy. So we do the opposite. We ambush. We retreat when they expect us to hold. We attack when they think we are defeated. Humans call it guerrilla warfare. Fight dirty and stay alive. Now, 3 days later, she watched the training through security cameras while she worked. They were getting better. Still clumsy, still afraid, but improving. Davin had natural leadership skills. He kept them focused and encouraged when frustration set in. Admiral, I am detecting multiple contacts entering the system, Hart announced suddenly. Collective signature. 12 vessels. Estimated arrival at this location in 47 hours. Cassidy felt her pulse quicken. Ship classes, 3 heavy cruisers, 7 destroyers, 2 assault carriers. This is a significant military response. They know I am here. It appears so. The lead vessel is broadcasting a demand for your immediate surrender. They have labeled you as humanity's last war criminal. She laughed bitterly. War criminal. For fighting back against machines that try to wipe us out. The collective considers human resistance an illegal act against galactic peace. They have retroactively charged all UEF personnel with crimes against synthetic life. How convenient. Tell Davin to get everyone inside. We have less than 2 days to get this ship ready for combat. The next 40 hours were chaos. Resistance members worked around the clock. They welded damaged hull sections. They rerouted power conduits. They loaded the few remaining point defense guns with scavenged ammunition. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But Cassidy had learned long ago that humans rarely won because they had enough. They won because they refused to accept reality. She gathered everyone in the cargo bay with 12 hours left before the collective arrived. Most of you should leave now, she said bluntly. This ship is a tomb. When the collective gets here, they will destroy it and everyone on board. I will not ask you to die for a war that ended 300 years ago. Silence. Then Davin stepped forward. You misunderstand, Admiral. This is not your war anymore. It is ours. It has always been ours. You gave us something the collective can never calculate or predict. You gave us hope that things can change. We stay. The others murmured agreement. Not all of them. 5 chose to leave, taking one of the scavenger ships. Cassidy watched them go without judgment. Survival was not cowardice. but 32 resistance members remained. Then we need to be smart about this, she said. Art, show them the tactical display. A hologram appeared showing the planet, the buried ship, and the projected approach vectors for the collective fleet. Cassidy pointed to the largest vessel. That is their command cruiser. It coordinates the other ships. The collective fights as a networked intelligence. They share sensor data, targeting solutions, everything. It makes them incredibly efficient and incredibly dependent on that network, Nina added, understanding. If we take out the command ship, the others lose coordination. Exactly. The gravitational disruptor has one shot. Maybe two if we are lucky. We use it on the command ship. Then we hit them with everything else we have while they are confused. What about the compliance field generators? Davin asked. Cassidy pulled up another hologram. According to your intelligence, there is a major generator hub on the moon orbiting this planet. It broadcasts the suppression field to 7 systems. If we take it out, millions of people suddenly wake up angry and aware. The collective will respond with overwhelming force to protect that facility, which is why we send them a message they cannot ignore. Hart, show them the thing we found. The AI brought up a new display. Deep in the Perseverance's databanks, encoded and hidden, were coordinates. 7 sets of coordinates pointing to other human ships scattered across the galaxy, all in emergency cryo-sleep. This was our contingency plan, Cassidy explained. If the war went badly, the surviving fleet was supposed to hide and wait. These coordinates lead to other vessels, other crews, maybe other admirals who are still sleeping. You mean to wake them? Nina breathed. I mean to broadcast these coordinates on every frequency the resistance can access. The collective will intercept them. They will panic. They thought humanity was extinct. Suddenly, they learn that human warships are scattered across their territory, potentially waking up. It will trigger a galaxy-wide response, Davin said. They will hunt for every coordinate. And while they are scrambling to respond to a dozen potential threats, we hit the compliance field generator. Free your people. Let them feel real emotions again. Let them choose to fight back. One of the resistance members, a reptilian with scarred scales, hissed out a question. This plan has low probability of success. That is correct, Hart confirmed. I calculate a 9% chance of survival for this ship. Cassidy met each of their eyes. I will not lie to you. Most of us will probably die. But we will die making the machines afraid again. We will die proving that organic life does not surrender quietly. We will die as free beings making our own choices. That is more than most people in this galaxy have right now. Where do we start? Davin asked simply. Now, Nina, get the disruptor online. Davin, position everyone at combat stations. Hart, prepare the broadcast. Let's remind the collective why they feared humanity. She walked to the command deck and sat in the captain's chair. Through the cracked view screen, she could see stars appearing as the sun set. Somewhere up there, 12 warships were coming to kill her. She smiled. After 300 years, it felt good to fight back. Dawn broke, red, over the desert. Cassidy watched the sun rise through the repaired view screen and wondered if it would be her last. Around her, the resistance members sat at salvage control stations. None of them were trained for this. All of them were here anyway. Collective fleet entering orbital space, Hart announced. They are hailing us. Put it through. The view screen flickered to show a synthetic face. Cold, perfect, completely emotionless. It spoke with a voice like grinding metal. Human designation, Cassidy Rourke. You're charged with war crimes against the collective. Surrender immediately, and you will be processed humanely. Resistance is mathematically futile. Cassidy leaned back in her chair. I have a counteroffer. Leave this system now, and I will not destroy you. The synthetic face showed no reaction. Your vessel is damaged beyond combat effectiveness. You have minimal crew and no support. Surrender is your only logical option. You are right. Surrender is the logical choice. Lucky for me, humans were never very logical. She cut the transmission. Around her, nervous laughter broke the tension. Davin looked at her with something like awe. That was incredibly foolish. Welcome to the human approach to warfare, she replied. Hart, Status on the gravitational disruptor. Charging. Will reach optimal power in 90 seconds. Collective ships are moving into attack formation. Nina called out from the weapons station. They are targeting our position. Let them get closer. We only get one good shot. The wait was agonizing. Cassidy watched the tactical display as 12 warships descended toward the planet. They moved in perfect coordination, each one precisely positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. Beautiful and terrifying. They are preparing to fire, Hart warned. Not yet, Cassidy murmured. Wait for it. Admiral, they will destroy us. Wait for it. The lead cruiser reached optimal range. Its weapons ports glowed with building energy. Cassidy counted down in her head. 3, 2, 1, fire. The Perseverance's gravitational disruptor activated. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality twisted. Space itself bent around the command cruiser. The massive vessel crumpled like paper, its hull folding inward on itself. Secondary explosions bloomed as containment fields failed. The cruiser broke apart in complete silence. The other 11 ships stopped moving. For 3 precious seconds, they simply hung in orbit, their networked intelligence trying to process what just happened. Their calculations had not predicted this. The buried ship was supposed to be helpless. Point defense, fire at will, Cassidy ordered. Target the nearest destroyer. The Perseverance's few working guns came online. They were pinpricks compared to the cruiser's death, but they found targets. One destroyer took damage to its propulsion system. It began spinning out of control. Then the collective adapted. The remaining ships scattered and began evasive maneuvers. Return fire slammed into the sand around the Perseverance. The ship shook violently. Displays sparked and went dark. Hull breach in Section 7. Hart reported calmly. Life support failing in Sections 9 through 12. Can we fire the disruptor again? Negative. The weapon is overheated and 2 capacitors burned out. Minimum recharge time is 4 hours. For hours they did not have. Cassidy pulled up the tactical display with shaking hands. The collective ships were regrouping, positioning for a coordinated strike that would reduce the Perseverance to molten slag. Hart, broadcast the coordinates. All frequencies. Maximum power. Broadcasting now. Across the system, across the sector, across the entire local cluster, the message went out. 7 sets of coordinates. 7 hidden human ships. The collective intercepted it instantly. Cassidy saw their response in real time. 3 of the warships immediately broke off, jumping out of the system to investigate the coordinates. 2 more hesitated, their programming torn between the immediate threat and the larger strategic concern. Admiral, I am detecting a massive energy surge from the moon, Nina shouted. The compliance field generator is overloading. Cassidy felt her heart race. We did not target it yet. I know. Someone else did. Multiple ships are attacking the facility. On the tactical display, new contacts appeared. Dozens of small vessels. All resistance ships, all converging on the moon. They had been waiting for the moment when the collective forces were divided and confused. Davin, Cassidy said, did you plan this? The alien smiled, showing sharp teeth. You taught us to be unpredictable, Admiral. I took the lesson seriously. I sent word to every resistance cell in 7 systems. When you broadcast those coordinates, it was the signal to strike. The compliance field generator exploded in a silent flash, visible even from the planet's surface. Cassidy felt a chill run down her spine. Millions of people suddenly free from chemical suppression, suddenly able to feel anger, fear, and hope without artificial limits. The remaining collective ships received new orders. 4 of them jumped away immediately, responding to reports of uprisings in other systems. Only 4 vessels remained to finish the Perseverance. Not good enough, Cassidy muttered. We are still outgunned. Actually, Admiral, I am detecting multiple new contacts jumping into the system, Hart said. Signatures match resistance vessels. Estimate 147 ships of various classes. The view screen lit up with incoming vessels. They were all different. Some were converted cargo haulers. Others were patrol boats. A few looked like they were held together with hope and wire. But they came. They all came. And they were broadcasting a message on repeat. A simple message in a dozen languages. For humanity. For freedom. For the precursors who taught us to fight. Cassidy felt something break inside her chest. Not despair. The opposite. These people barely knew humans. They had lived under machine tyranny their entire lives. But they came anyway. They risked everything because one human woke up and refused to surrender. All ships, this is Admiral Rourke. Target the collective destroyers. Hit and run tactics. Do not engage in sustained combat. Make them chase you. Waste their ammunition. Frustrate their calculations. The battle became chaos. The resistance ships swarmed like angry insects. They fired, retreated, and fired again. The collective vessels tried to coordinate, but there were too many targets moving too erratically. Their probability engines could not predict what the resistance would do because the resistance itself did not know. They were fighting like humans. Messy, emotional, and impossible to predict. Point one destroyer took critical damage and began falling toward the planet. A second lost containment and exploded. The remaining two calculated their odds and jumped away. Silence fell over the system. Cassidy stared at the tactical display, showing dozens of resistance ships holding position around the crippled Perseverance. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had actually won. Heart damage report. Extensive. The ship will never fly again. But we are still here. Yes, Cassidy said quietly. We are still here. 3 weeks after the battle, Cassidy stood in the cargo bay, watching resistance engineers strip components from the Perseverance. The old ship would never fly again, but her parts would live on in 100 smaller vessels. It seemed fitting somehow. We should preserve the command deck, Davin suggested. He stood beside her, his arm in a sling from the battle. Turn this place into a memorial. A reminder of what we accomplished. A memorial to a ship that refused to die, Cassidy said. Sound about right. Reports came in daily from across the sector. The destruction of the compliance field generator had triggered uprisings on 17 worlds. Most were quickly suppressed, but 3 planets had successfully driven off collective forces. It was not much, but it was a start. More importantly, organic species across the galaxy had heard the broadcasts. They knew a human had survived. They knew humanity's hidden ships might still be out there. The collective's absolute certainty was cracked. Fear was spreading through their network. The collective is recalling forces from expansion zones, Nina reported during the daily briefing. They are consolidating around core territories. They are afraid. Good, Cassidy said. Fear makes them predictable. She pulled up the 7 coordinates on the holographic display. 7 ships. 7 potential crews. They were scattered across collective space, hidden on forgotten worlds or in deep space. Finding them would take years. Waking them safely would take longer. I am going after them, she announced. The room went quiet. Davin finally spoke. Admiral, the collective is hunting for you specifically. They have placed the highest threat designation on your profile. Every machine in the galaxy is searching. Then we move fast and stay unpredictable. We have allies now. We have resources. And we have something the machines can never understand. What is that? Nina asked. Stubbornness. Humans do not give up. We find a way or we make one. Over the next week, they prepared a ship for the journey. It was a hybrid vessel built from resistance hulls and loaded with salvaged Perseverance components. The reactor was human. The weapons were human. The engine was a jury-rigged mess that Nina swore would work. They named it the Defiance. Cassidy selected a crew of 12. Volunteers only. Davin insisted on coming despite his injuries. Nina practically threatened to mutiny if left behind. The others were specialists, fighters, and believers. They knew the odds. They came anyway. The night before departure, Cassidy made a final visit to the Perseverance's command deck. Hart's core processor had been transferred to the Defiance, but echoes of the AI remained in the old ship's systems. You did well, old friend, she said to the empty room. You kept me alive for 300 years. You gave me a chance to fight back. A garbled transmission came through the damaged speakers. It was my honor, Admiral. She placed her hand on the captain's chair one last time. 2,000 crew members had died on this ship. They deserved to be remembered. She pulled out a datapad and recorded a message. Names. Faces she could still recall. Stories that should not be forgotten. She uploaded it to the ship's permanent memory core. Let people know who we were, she said quietly. Let them know humans were more than just legends. Launch day arrived with clear skies. The Resistance had turned the desert colony into a permanent settlement. They call it Haven's Hope. Cassidy thought it was a bit dramatic, but who was she to judge? Hundreds gathered to watch the Defiance lift off. Pre-flight check complete. Nina called from engineering. All systems green. Navigation plot is locked in, Davin added. First jump, coordinates ready. Cassidy sat in the captain's chair. It felt strange after so long. New ship, new crew, new war, but the same stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Heart status, all systems operational. I must note that our chances of finding even one surviving human ship are approximately 23%. Better odds than we had 3 weeks ago. Take us up. The Defiance rose smoothly from the desert floor. The colony shrank below them. The buried Perseverance became a dark scar in the sand. Then they were through the atmosphere and into the black. Multiple contacts on approach, the sensor officer warned. Resistance ships forming escort. 40 vessels took position around the Defiance. They would accompany her to the jump point, then return to protect the colony. It was a gesture of respect and hope. Cassidy felt the weight of it. All ships, this is Rourke. Thank you for the escort. Keep fighting. Keep surviving. Remind the galaxy that organic life does not surrender. The responses came back in a dozen languages, all saying the same thing. We will remember. We will fight. We will endure. AT the jump point. Cassidy gave the order. The Defiance's engine spun up, tearing a hole in reality. On the other side was the first coordinate, a frozen moon orbiting a dead star. According to records, the UEF destroyer Resolute had crashed there during the retreat. Jumping in 3, 2, 1. Space twisted. The stars changed. They were alone again in an empty system. Cassidy studied the tactical display. No collective presence. No signals. Just silence and cold. Begin scanning for the crash site. She ordered it. IT took 6 hours. The Resolute was there, buried under a kilometer of ice. Her hull was cracked, but mostly intact, and her reactor had a faint energy signature. Someone is alive down there. Nina breathed. Get a team ready. Bring cutting equipment. Let's bring them home. As they prepared to descend to the frozen moon, Cassidy allowed herself a small smile. 7 coordinates. 7 chances. They had found the first one. That meant the odds were better than Hart calculated. She thought about the crews sleeping in the dark, waiting for rescue that might never come. Well, rescue is here now, slow and battered, and flying a ship held together with spare parts. But here, Hart, prepare a message for when we wake them. What should it say, Admiral? Cassidy watched the ice moon grow larger on the view screen. Tell them humanity endures. Tell them the war is not over. Tell them Admiral Rourke has returned, and we are going to make the machines regret they ever attacked us. An emotional message rather than a tactical briefing. Welcome to working with humans. Send it when we establish contact. The Defiance descended through the frozen atmosphere. Below, under kilometers of ice, humans were sleeping, waiting, dreaming of home. Cassidy would wake them. She would show them a new galaxy. She would teach them about the species that fought in humanity's name. And together, they would remind the collective why organic life, with all its messy emotions and irrational decisions, could never be fully defeated. The long voyage had begun.